The great throne room of the Jarathi Empire glittered like a frozen ocean. Tall crystal spires arched toward a ceiling so high it disappeared into a faint haze. Golden banners with the royal crest swayed gently from the upper balconies, catching the light from hundreds of floating lanterns. The air smelled faintly of spices and cold stone, and every sound echoed like it had been caught in a vast cavern. Captain Elias Ward stood at the far end of the hall, his boots clicking softly on the polished marble floor. He had been summoned from the human embassy earlier that morning without explanation. A royal messenger, clad in deep blue armor, had arrived at his quarters with only one sentence: "The princess demands your presence." He had been in the Jarathi capital for only 2 weeks, representing Earth in tense negotiations that could end years of distrust. The Jarathi were a proud, ancient race, tall, with angular features and eyes that glowed faintly like molten gold. They ruled not just this world but several star systems beyond. Humans were newcomers to this part of the galaxy, and many Jarathi nobles viewed them as upstarts. As Elias walked forward, dozens of alien courtiers turned to watch him. Their eyes followed his every step, some curious, some hostile. He knew what they saw: a human wearing a simple black diplomat's uniform, his posture straight, his expression calm. They probably expected him to look nervous. He didn't give them the satisfaction. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform of white stone, sat Princess Celira Vane. She was dressed in ceremonial armor polished to a silver shine, her long cloak flowing down the steps like a river of deep red silk. Her crown was delicate yet sharp-edged, a design that seemed both beautiful and dangerous. Her gaze was fixed on Elias as if she could see through him. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice carrying easily across the hall without the need for amplification. It was clear, steady, and commanding. "You stand in the court of the Jarathi throne. Do you know why you have been summoned?" Elias stopped at the base of the platform, exactly where protocol dictated. "No, Your Highness," he replied. His tone was polite but firm, the kind that acknowledged her rank without showing weakness. The princess rose from her throne. She was taller than most human men, and the way she carried herself gave her the presence of someone who had never been questioned in her life. She descended the steps slowly, each movement measured. The courtiers went silent. "You come here as a representative of your species," she said, "a species that has yet to earn the respect of the Jarathi. Many in this court believe humans to be reckless, undisciplined, and without the traditions that give a people strength." There were murmurs among the nobles. Elias listened without reacting. He knew better than to interrupt. Celira stopped in front of him, standing so close he could see the faint shimmer of metallic threads woven into her cloak. "Here, in the court of the Empire," she said, "respect is shown through action. When you meet your betters, you kneel. It is the oldest custom of my people." Elias could feel every eye in the room watching. The moment was carefully set. She had arranged this to test him. If he refused, it would confirm the noble's belief that humans were arrogant. If he agreed too quickly, they would think he was weak. The princess's eyes narrowed slightly. "Kneel before the throne, Captain Ward. Show that you understand. Your place in this court." Elias didn't hesitate. In one smooth motion, he went down on one knee, his head bowed just enough to follow the form of the custom, but not so low as to suggest shame. The marble floor was cold beneath his knee, and the sound of the movement echoed faintly in the grand chamber. A ripple of surprise passed through the court. This was not the reaction they had expected from a human envoy. The princess's expression didn't change, but her eyes studied him more closely now. "You kneel easily," she said after a moment. "Do you submit so quickly, or do you seek favor?" Elias allowed a faint smile to touch his lips as he looked up at her. "I kneel," he said simply, Because I respect the customs of the people I have come to speak with. It is not a matter of submission. It is a matter of understanding. There was another wave of quiet whispers among the nobles. Some seemed impressed. Others frowned, as though trying to guess what his true intentions were. Scifi stepped back slightly, circling him as if studying a new weapon. "We will see," she said. "Words are easy, Captain Ward. Actions reveal the truth. Rise." Stood, meeting her gaze without flinching. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement that neither of them was exactly what the other had expected. The princess turned to address the court. "The human envoy has shown respect," she declared. "He will be allowed to speak at the next council session." The formal audience was over, but Elias knew this was only the first step. The princess had tested him, and he had passed for now. But in her eyes, he saw the promise of more challenges to come. As he left the throne room, the murmurs of the courtiers followed him. Some were curious, others suspicious. Elias walked with the same calm stride he had entered with, but inside, his mind was already at work. He had come here not just to negotiate, but to shape the future between humans and the Jarathi. And kneeling, despite how it might have looked, was exactly what he had wanted. The council chamber of the Jarathi palace was nothing like the throne room. Where the throne room was built for show, all bright crystal and echoing space, the council chamber was designed for focus. The ceiling was lower, the walls lined with shelves of glowing data crystals, each containing centuries of recorded debates and decisions. A great oval table sat in the center, carved from a single block of black stone streaked with silver veins. Captain Elias Ward entered with a steady step. The air in here was cooler, heavier. 12 council members, each wearing their clan's colors, sat in tall-backed chairs around the table. Princess Scifi occupied the central seat, her cloak folded neatly behind her, her posture as perfect as the lines of the table itself. Elias took the seat assigned to him opposite the princess. He could feel the stares of the others, measuring him the way a hunter studies an unknown animal. Some of them had been in the throne room the day before. They remembered the kneeling. They were wondering what it meant. The princess began without ceremony. "Council of the Jarathi Empire," she said, her voice crisp. "We are gathered to hear the proposals of the human envoy. But before that, I have a question for Captain Ward." Elias inclined his head slightly. "I will answer if I can, Your Highness." Her golden eyes narrowed, not in anger but in calculation. "Yesterday, before the throne, you followed the oldest custom of my people. You knelt, yet I have heard humans are proud and slow to bend to another's authority. Tell me, was it respect or was it strategy?" A few council members leaned forward, eager for his reply. Elias kept his voice calm and even. "It was both. I respect the traditions of your people, but I also know that respect is the first step toward trust, and trust is the foundation of any alliance." Scifi tilted, her head slightly. "An alliance assumes equality. Are you saying you see the Jarathi and humans as equals?" "Yes," Elias said simply. "We are different in many ways. Your people have power, wisdom, and history that humans can learn from, but we have our own strengths. We survive in places others will not. We adapt to challenges quickly. Together, those strengths could protect both our worlds." The chamber was silent for a moment. Then a counselor with deep green armor spoke. "And if our council decides that we do not want such an alliance, if we see no benefit?" Elias looked at him steadily. "Then I will still treat you with respect. But I will remind you that history favors those who make allies before the storm comes, not after." A faint murmur passed through the room. Saliera's gaze remained locked on him, as if she were trying to read every thought behind his eyes. The discussion moved on to trade routes, mutual defense, and shared technology. Elias listened as much as he spoke, careful not to push too hard. He gave answers that hinted at opportunities without revealing every detail. He wanted them curious. He wanted them asking questions later, in smaller rooms where the real deals were made. Hours later, the council adjourned. As the members filed out, Celira rose and motioned for Elias to remain. Soon they were alone in the chamber, the door sliding, shut with a faint hiss. "You play this game well, Captain Ward," she said. "But I wonder, do you play for your people or for yourself?" Elias allowed himself a faint smile. "Sometimes, Princess, those goals are the same. If I succeed here, my people benefit, and so does my career. But my personal gain means nothing if the alliance fails." She studied him for a long moment. "You know, in our culture, kneeling is not simply a show of respect. It is a declaration. One who kneels is bound to prove their worth. Fail, and the act becomes shame. Succeed, and you are remembered for generations." "I understand," Elias said. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Do you? You have stepped into a story that began long before you arrived. You will be tested, not just in this chamber, but in ways you cannot predict." "I expected nothing less," Elias replied. For the first time, the princess's expression softened, almost, though not quite, into a smile. "Then let us see what the coming days bring, Captain Ward." That evening, Elias returned to the human embassy. The sky outside, the palace windows, was streaked with deep violet as the twin moons began to rise. He stood at the balcony for a while, looking out at the alien city below, spiraling towers of stone and glass, streets lit by hovering lantern spheres, and the constant hum of distant engines. His aide, a young lieutenant named Rin, stepped onto the balcony. "I heard the council meeting went well," Rin said. "It went as planned," Elias replied. "As planned? You didn't even know you'd be questioned about kneeling." "I didn't know the exact words, no," Elias said, with a faint grin, "but I knew she'd bring it up. It wasn't just a custom, it was an opening move. And I think she knows I meant it that way." Rin frowned. "So you're playing a long game?" "I'm always playing a long game," Elias said. "The trick is making them think they're the ones in control." Far above the city, in the high spire of the palace, Princess Celira stood at her own balcony. She looked out over the same view, her thoughts quiet but sharp. The human was dangerous, not because of strength or weapons, but because he understood the dance of power. Most outsiders stumbled in Jarathi politics. Elias Ward seemed to glide through it. She had tested him once. She would test him again, and deep down, though she would never say it aloud, she was curious to see how far this human would go. The next morning began with a low hum across the city. Elias noticed it the moment he stepped out onto the embassy's balcony. It wasn't the normal background sound of traffic or the soft wind whistling through the tower spires. This hum carried a strange rhythm, like a distant drum beat echoing through the air. Lieutenant Rin joined him, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "That sound's been going on since before dawn," he said. "The locals are talking about it." Elias leaned against the railing, scanning the streets below. "Any idea what it means?" "Some say it's a festival. Others say it's a warning signal." Elias frowned. "Two very different things." Before Rin could answer, a messenger drone approached the balcony and hovered at eye level. It was a smooth silver sphere with faint blue lights along its surface. A voice came from it, formal and clear. "Captain Elias Ward, you are summoned to the outer gardens of the Jarathi Palace. Princess Celira requests your presence immediately." The drone waited silently for a reply. "Tell her I'll be there, within the hour," Elias said. The drone's lights flickered once in acknowledgement before it turned and shot away into the morning sky. An hour later, Elias walked through the palace's outer gardens. Here, nature and architecture blended together. Massive flowering trees grew through carved stone arches, and crystal fountains poured water into pools where silver-scaled fish darted. The air smelled of something sweet and sharp, like citrus, mixed with spice. Princess Celira stood near one of the pools, speaking to a tall man in deep red armor. The man's posture was rigid, his face hidden behind a half-helmet. When he noticed Elias approaching, his eyes, faintly glowing gold, shifted to study him with the same kind of caution a predator gives another predator. "Captain Ward," Celira said, turning toward him. "This is Commander Valen of the Royal Guard." The commander inclined his head slightly but said nothing. "I asked you here because there has been movement," Celira continued. "The hum you've been hearing is not for celebration. It is a signal to call the clans together. Something has happened in the outlying territories." "What kind of something?" Elias asked. "An attack," she said simply. "A supply convoy was destroyed along the Arathan trade route. 2 ships lost. Survivors claim the attackers were mercenaries, possibly hired by the Koresh Dominion." Elias had read enough reports to know the Koresh were a rival power in this region. They had clashed with both humans and Jarathi before. "You think this is a move against the Empire?" he asked. "I think it may be a move against more than that," Celira said, her tone serious. "The convoy carried goods for the council, meeting in 3 days. Gifts meant to smooth negotiations with your people. Without them, the tone of that meeting may shift, and not in your favor." Elias took a slow breath. "If the goal is to break trust before it's even formed, this would do it." Valen finally spoke, his voice deep and cold. "I told the princess this was no coincidence. Whoever planned it knew both the Jarathi and the humans would feel the loss." Celira's gaze sharpened. "Which is why I intend to send a retrieval team. We will search the wreckage for proof of who did this. Captain Ward, I want you to come." Elias blinked in mild surprise. "Me? I'm a diplomat, not a soldier." "Your presence will ensure no one can claim we hid the truth from your people," Celira explained. "And—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You might see things we overlook." Elias knew this was more than a request. It was another test. "Very well," he said. "When do we leave?" "Within the hour," Celira replied. The journey to the Arathan trade route took most of the day. They traveled in a royal patrol ship, its hull a sleek silver curve broken only by the insignia of the Jarathi crown. Inside, the controls were smooth crystal panels, and the seats shaped to hold even the tallest warriors comfortably. Elias sat near a window, watching the stars streak past. Celira stood beside the commander at the front, speaking quietly about tactics. Every now and then she glanced back at Elias, not suspiciously, but as if weighing what he might do when they arrived. When they reached the site, the wreckage was scattered across a barren moon. Sharp cliffs rose on either side, casting long shadows over the debris fields. Broken pieces of hull plating glittered in the weak sunlight. The patrol ship landed near the largest fragment. As the ramp lowered, Elias followed Celira and the guards into the wreck. The air was thin, and the ground crunched under their boots. Celira's voice came through the comlink in his helmet. "We search for anything unusual, mark it for recovery." Elias moved carefully among the debris. It was clear the attack had been precise. Engines destroyed first, cargo holds next. No random firing. Whoever had done this had known exactly where to strike. Near one half-buried crate, he noticed something odd. a small rectangular device half hidden under twisted metal. It was black, with a faint pattern etched into it, one he recognized from "Human Intelligence Files, Celira," he called. "I think you should see this." She came over quickly, kneeling beside him. Her eyes narrowed at the device. "That is not Jarathi technology." "It's not Koresh either," Elias said quietly. "It's human. Smuggler grade, but definitely human." For a moment, the only sound was the wind scraping across the rocks. "This changes everything," Celira said finally. "If the Council learns of this, they may believe humans attacked the convoy, which would destroy any chance of an alliance," Elias finished. Celira straightened, her gaze unreadable. "We will speak of this later, away from open channels. For now, we continue the search." Elias nodded, but inside his mind was already racing. If someone wanted to frame humans, they were doing an excellent job. And if he couldn't prove otherwise soon, the Council might turn on him before the talks had even truly begun. Back on the patrol ship, as the moon faded into the darkness behind them, Elias sat in silence. Celira stood at the viewport, her cloak shifting in the recycled air. She didn't look back at him, but her voice was low and certain. "This is the first shadow, Captain Ward," she said, "and shadows rarely come alone." The patrol ship touched down on the palace's private landing pad under the pale light of the twin moons. Guards in silver and crimson armor moved quickly to unload the recovered items from the wreckage. None of them spoke to Elias, but he could feel their eyes on him, the weight of silent suspicion already forming. Princess Celira stepped down the ramp first, her cloak catching in the cool night breeze. Commander Valen followed close behind, carrying the sealed container that held the human-made device. Elias walked last, his mind working through possibilities like pieces on a chessboard. They entered a side hall of the palace, far from the public chambers. The walls here were plain stone, the air cooler. Celira stopped near a secure door and dismissed the guards. Only she, Valen, and Elias stepped inside. The room was small, lined with a single long table and several hollow projectors. Celira placed the container on the table, its surface glowing faintly. She pressed her hand to the lock panel. It opened with a soft click. Inside lay the black device they had found on the moon. Its faint etchings caught the light like shadows carved into stone. "This," Celira began, "will be taken as proof by the wrong eyes. If the Council sees it before we know the truth, they will assume the humans are guilty." Valen's voice was sharp. "And with respect, Princess, that would not be an unreasonable conclusion. This is human design. We cannot pretend otherwise." Elias met his gaze steadily. "And yet it's too obvious. If my people had truly done this, they would not have left such a clear signature behind. This was meant to be found." Valen's frown deepened. "Perhaps. Or perhaps you underestimate the greed of your own kind." "Enough," Celira said, her voice cutting clean through the tension. She turned to Elias. "If you are correct, then someone wishes to frame your people. If Valen is correct, then this is a betrayal from within your own. In either case, the danger is the same." Elias nodded slowly. "Then we need more than this single device. We need proof that will stand against any accusation." Celira tilted her head. "And how do you propose we find such proof, Captain Ward?" Elias allowed himself the faintest smile. "By letting the Council think they already have it." The next morning, the Council convened in full session. The great chamber was filled with the low murmur of nobles and clan leaders taking their seats. Celira entered first, followed by Commander Valen and several guards carrying sealed containers. Elias walked in last, his steps calm and measured despite the pressure of dozens of eyes. Celira stood at the center and addressed the assembly. "The convoy that was meant to bring gifts for our honored guests was destroyed along the Arathan route. We recovered fragments of the attacker's technology." Valen stepped forward, opening one of the containers. Inside was a piece of hull. Plating, charred, but still showing the pattern of human manufacturing. A few council members leaned forward sharply at the sight. "This is troubling," Salira continued. "It may suggest human involvement. But before we decide, I have asked Captain Ward to speak for his people." Elias stepped forward, letting the silence stretch just long enough for every ear to focus on him. "I do not deny this technology is human," he said. "But I will ask the council this. Does it make sense for the humans to attack a convoy that carried gifts meant to benefit us? Does it make sense for us to destroy a meeting before it has even begun?" A low murmur rippled through the chamber. Elias reached into his coat and placed a small hollow projector on the table. "This," he said, "is a recording from the human embassy's long-range scanners. It shows the convoy in the moments before the attack. You will see that the attacking ships bore no markings, Zarathi or otherwise, and their weapons were not of human make. Only after the battle ended was human technology placed among the wreckage." Salira watched him closely. She had not known he would present this. The projection flickered to life, showing the convoy ships moving across the black void. Then, like a sudden storm, 3 dark shapes emerged from the asteroid field, firing without warning. Their weapons flashed bright. But the design was unfamiliar, the energy signature unlike human or Zarathi. The image ended with the attackers vanishing into the shadows. "This," Elias said, "is not the action of an honest enemy. It is the work of someone who wishes to hide behind another's name." One of the elder counselors leaned forward. "And yet, Captain Ward, the device you recovered is human. How do you explain this?" Elias met the counselor's gaze. "By asking you to think like a deceiver. If I wanted you to believe a rival attacked you, would I not make sure you found evidence that pointed to them? This is not proof. It is bait." When the meeting ended, the council was unsettled, but had agreed to delay judgment until a deeper investigation could be made. That alone was a victory. As the chamber emptied, Salira walked beside Elias toward the private exit. "You took a risk presenting that recording," she said quietly. "It was a calculated risk," Elias replied. "You needed the council to see that there are other possibilities. If I had stayed silent, suspicion would have hardened into truth." "And where did you get this recording?" she asked. Elias's smile was small but confident. "Let's just say I made sure my people kept their eyes open from the moment I set foot on your world." Salira studied him as they walked. "You are not just a diplomat, Captain Ward. You are something else, and I am not yet sure if that makes you an ally or a danger." "Maybe," Elias said. "I'm both." That night, the palace was quieter than usual. The hum of the city outside seemed distant, muffled. In her private chambers, Salira stood, before a window, the moons casting pale light across her desk. In her hand was the human device from the wreckage. She turned it slowly, her mind replaying the events of the day. Across the city, Elias sat in the dim light of the embassy office, studying reports on his datapad. The more he read, the clearer it became. Someone had gone to great effort to place human technology in the wreckage, and that meant they had access to both human designs and Zarathi shipping schedules. Whoever they were, they had influence. And they would not stop with one attack. The web was tightening. The night was unusually quiet in the Zarathi palace. Even the usually bustling corridors seemed to hold their breath. Captain Elias Ward moved through the halls with careful steps, his senses alert to every shadow. He had a feeling that the danger Salira had warned about was closer than anyone realized. Princess Salira waited in the main audience chamber, alone, studying reports she had received from the outlying territories. Her expression was calm, but her golden eyes reflected the faint flicker of worry. The council had agreed to delay judgment, but that did not mean the threat had disappeared. Someone wanted to frame the humans, and that someone was bold enough to strike close to the palace itself. Elias entered quietly. "You requested my presence?" he asked. Salira looked up and nodded. "Yes, I need your perspective. Someone is planning another attack, and we do not know where it will strike." He leaned against the edge of the table, scanning the data crystals. "Based on the patterns from the previous strike, it's likely they will aim for maximum disruption. That means they might target the palace directly, or at least a convoy approaching it." Salira's lips pressed into a thin line. "Then we must be ready. I will assign additional guards, but we cannot show panic. If this assassin sees weakness, they will strike immediately." Elias studied her for a moment. "We may not have to wait. The attackers might come tonight." Before Salira could respond, a sudden alarm rang through the palace. Red lights flashed along the corridors, and a low siren echoed across the walls. "They've come," Salira said, her voice steady. Elias moved beside her. "We need to get to a secure location and coordinate our defenses. Follow me." They ran through a series of narrow hallways, past guards who were rushing to respond. The palace, normally a place of ceremonial grace, now felt like a maze. Elias's mind raced as he observed every door, every shadow, every corner where an intruder might hide. Finally, they reached the inner security chamber. Large screens displayed various parts of the palace and the outer landing pads. Commander Valen was already there, his face tense. "They are inside," he said. "Two intruders bypassed the outer sensors. We believe they are human-trained mercenaries." Elias frowned. "Trained how? They weren't ours." "No," Valen agreed. "But the patterns of movement, the stealth, the timing, it suggests professional discipline. Someone prepared them well." Salira moved closer to the central console. "We will split forces. Half of the guards will cover the corridors, half will protect the princess. Captain Ward, you will help coordinate." Elias nodded. "Understood." The intruders moved quickly through the palace, but the guards were ready. As alarms blared, Elias directed patrols through the halls, using the palace's layout to predict their movements. He coordinated with Salira, who gave orders with precise authority, her voice cutting through panic like a blade. Suddenly, one of the monitors showed a figure approaching the inner chambers. Elias squinted. The intruder was fast, cloaked in dark armor, carrying what looked like a compact energy weapon. "Salira," Elias said. "They're heading for the audience chamber." She didn't hesitate. "Then we intercept them now. Valen, block the side doors. Captain Ward, take the central hallway." Elias ran ahead, moving with the fluid precision of someone used to danger. As he turned the corner, he saw the intruder before they could strike. Without thinking, Elias threw himself to the side as a pulse of energy shot past where he had stood. The intruder spun, revealing their face hidden behind a visor. Elias recognized the type immediately. It was designed to hide identity, but the stance, the movements, everything screamed training. He ducked behind a pillar, pulling out a small energy net device. Salira arrived, moving swiftly with her guards. Together, they forced the intruder back, cornering them against a wall. Elias pressed a button on his device, and the net shot forward, wrapping around the attacker. The energy pulses immobilized the figure without harming them. Salira approached, her eyes sharp. "Who sent you?" she demanded. The intruder remained silent, their body tense beneath the restraint. Valen moved forward, scanning the room for additional threats. "They acted alone," he said cautiously, "but it may be a distraction." Elias nodded. "Exactly. Whoever planned this wanted us to reveal our positions. The real attack might still be coming." Hours passed as the palace tightened security. The intruder, now restrained, refused to speak. Elias and Salira examined every detail, trying to understand the motive. Finally, Salira broke the silence. "Captain Ward, you predicted this. Why?" "Patterns," Elias replied simply. Someone skilled will attack where they think we are weakest. They assume the humans are not prepared to respond immediately. I anticipated they might strike at night to create confusion, and that is exactly what happened. They underestimated our coordination and your command. Salira studied him, admiration flickering in her golden eyes. Your calculations saved lives tonight. And yet, Elias said, this is only the beginning. Whoever sent this mercenary knows the palace and human procedures. They have more information than we do. We must find the source before they strike again. The princess nodded. Then we search. Together. Elias allowed himself a moment to glance at her. For the first time, he realized how much he had come to trust her instincts. She was not only a ruler, but also a strategist. Their partnership, born from a challenge in the throne room, had grown into something essential for survival. Captain Ward, Salira said quietly, I thought kneeling yesterday was an act of respect, but I see now it was more than that. You are not only cautious, you are clever, and cleverness may be what saves us. Elias smiled faintly. Sometimes the smallest act opens the largest door, and sometimes a challenge isn't a threat, it's an opportunity. Outside, the city slept beneath the twin moons, unaware of the danger that had passed. But inside the palace, the bond between human and princess had strengthened. They were no longer simply diplomat and ruler. They were allies, prepared to face the next shadow together. The night ended with renewed vigilance. Guards patrolled every corridor. Cameras and sensors scanned continuously, and the restrained intruder remained under close watch. Elias and Salira stood side by side, looking at the palace map spread across the table. This is not over, Elias said, tracing a finger, along possible escape routes the intruder might have used. They will try again, and next time they will be smarter. We must be smarter too. Salira nodded. We will be ready. Together. For the first time, both realized the depth of the challenge and the importance of trust. In a palace filled with shadows and deception, the only certainty was their growing partnership, forged under pressure and danger and ready to face whatever came next. Dawn broke over the Jarathi palace, painting the city in soft shades of violet and gold. After a night filled with alarms, running through corridors and confronting an intruder, the palace seemed almost peaceful. But both Princess Salira and Captain Elias Ward knew that calm was temporary. The real threat, whoever had sent the mercenaries, was still out there, watching, waiting. Elias stood on the balcony of the embassy wing, watching the twin moons fade from the sky. Beside him, Lieutenant Rin was quiet, sensing the same tension. Do you think they will strike again? Rin asked. Elias shook his head slightly. Yes, but they won't succeed this time. We've learned more about their patterns, their timing, and their methods. The advantage is ours now. We just need patience and coordination. A soft voice behind him interrupted his thoughts. Captain Ward, Salira said as she stepped onto the balcony, her cloak brushing the floor lightly. The council expects an explanation today, and they will not accept delays. You must come with me. Elias nodded. Lead the way, Your Highness. The council chamber was already filled when they arrived. Councilors whispered among themselves, glancing at the human envoy and the princess. Some still doubted his intentions. Others had begun to respect the calm determination he showed. Salira took her place at the head of the table, while Elias stood beside her. Commander Valen and several guards flanked the doorway. Captain Ward, Salira began, you have witnessed the threats to this palace firsthand. The council awaits your report. Elias stepped forward, projecting his voice so that every member could hear clearly. Honored councilors, the recent attacks on the Arathan convoy and this palace were not acts of humans. Evidence recovered from the sites shows that human technology was deliberately placed to mislead your investigation. The attackers were mercenaries, trained to imitate our methods, but not human operatives. Their goal was to provoke distrust between our peoples. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then one of the elder counselors spoke, his voice cautious. "You claim someone wanted to frame the humans, but do you have proof?" Elias smiled faintly and pressed a small button on the table. A hollow projection appeared, showing intercepted communications from unknown channels, decoded and analyzed by both human and Jarathi intelligence. The messages discussed mercenary payments, attack plans, and timing, never mentioning humans at all. "See for yourselves," Elias said. "The pattern shows someone seeking conflict, using deception to hide their true identity. Any blame placed on humans would be false." A murmur ran through the room. Salira glanced at Elias, her golden eyes reflecting quiet approval. She had trusted him before, and now the council could see the wisdom of that trust. After a long pause, another counselor, this one younger and clearly impressed, leaned forward. "It seems Captain Ward speaks the truth. If humans were responsible, they would not have left evidence to trace the real attackers. They would have acted more decisively." "Yes," Elias said calmly. "Deception always leaves traces. We have followed them, and together we have prevented disaster." Salira stood beside him, adding her authority to his words. "The human envoy has proven both loyalty and intelligence. I support his report completely." A few counselors exchanged glances, some nodding, others frowning, but the decision was clear. The council formally acknowledged that humans were not responsible, and the alliance discussions could proceed without suspicion or fear. Later, as the chamber emptied, Salira and Elias walked together through the palace gardens. The sun had fully risen, and the crystal fountains sparkled in the light. For the first time since their meeting in the throne room, there was no immediate danger, no alarms, no hidden intruders. "You handled yourself remarkably well," Salira said quietly. "Yesterday I thought you were clever. Today I know it." Elias shrugged modestly. "I only did what needed to be done. Planning, observation, patience. Anyone could have done it with the right preparation." Salira tilted her head. "Most would not have acted so calmly under pressure, and most would not have seen the patterns, the intentions behind the attacks. You did. And for that you have earned more than respect, Captain Ward." Elias looked at her, curious. "More than respect?" Salira smiled faintly. "Trust, partnership. The alliance we have been building is stronger because of you. Not as a human representative, not as an outsider, but as someone I can rely on." He allowed, a faint smile in return. "I think I understand now. Kneeling before the throne yesterday, it was more than a formality. It was the first step in building that trust." Salira's eyes flickered with warmth. "And you knew that, didn't you?" "Yes," Elias said simply. "I knew exactly what I was doing." For a moment, they walked in silence, the soft sound of fountains and wind filling the space. It was not the silence of fear or uncertainty, but of mutual understanding. Back in the council chamber later that day, the formal declaration of alliance was signed. Representatives from both humans and Jarathi shook hands and exchanged messages of cooperation. The halls echoed with cautious optimism. Elias watched as Salira signed the final parchment, the pen sliding over the ancient symbols of the Jarathi Empire. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then, just for a heartbeat, her eyes held a spark of something personal, a recognition of what had been accomplished together. The alliance was not just a political victory. It was proof that humans and Jarathi could work as equals, that trust and intelligence could bridge the gap between worlds. That evening, as the sun set behind distant spires, Elias and Salira stood together on the palace balcony. The city below was alive with light, the twin moons rising behind the distant mountains. For the first time, there was a sense of peace, not because the world was safe, but because they had proven that danger could be met and overcome through cooperation. "You know," Salira said softly, "I expected a human to resist, to act purely out of self-interest. But you acted for something greater, and for that, I am grateful." Elias shook his head, smiling. "I acted because I saw opportunity, but I also acted because I saw a leader worth following. That makes all the difference." Salira looked at him for a long moment. Then, with a quiet nod, she said, "Perhaps kneeling was the first step toward equality, Captain Ward, and now I see that equality is not just in rank or power, but in understanding." Elias smiled, knowing that the words applied to more than just politics. In a universe filled with shadows, deception, and danger, trust and partnership were stronger than any weapon. And in that moment, under the light of the twin moons, human and Jarathi stood as equals, not ruler and envoy, not alien and outsider, but allies, friends, and perhaps something more. The journey was far from over. There would be future threats, new challenges, and decisions that could shape the fate of worlds. But for now, the first shadow had passed, and together they had turned uncertainty into strength. The kneeling that had begun as a simple act of protocol had become the foundation of something far greater, and both of them knew. The future would be built not on fear, but on trust.